Morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Friday, the 26th day of September, 2025, and we have some very important stories in the headlines as usual. First of all, Benjamin Netanyahu is going to speak this morning at the UN. It'd be really interesting to see the response, see what he says, and what the fallout may be. We know as soon as he arrived in America, he talked about Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, about what's going on in Gaza. So this is all going to be very interesting. And speaking of what's going on in Gaza, this from the Jerusalem Post, former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair proposes he leads an interim Gaza government, believe it or not. And supposedly he has the backing of Witkoff and Kushner in this program, working with the various Muslim and Arab countries in the Middle East. So this is fascinating. So we'll get to that story. And then something that may be really ominous. Pete Hegseth, he's the Secretary of War, orders hundreds of U.S. military leaders to gather on short notice at Marine Base in Virginia. This is a Breitbart story. There's a lot of possibilities of why he's doing this. And finally, something that is so sickening, but something well, it's understandable, the world we live in. A Rasmussen poll, and Rasmussen is very good in his polling. He says 54%, over one half of liberals, call Charlie Kirk's killing understandable. Can you believe that? This is from Newsmax. 54% of liberals, over half of the people who call themselves liberals in the United States of America, call the killing of Charlie Kirk understandable. This is where this country has fallen to, and it's totally, totally sad. All right, let's get to the headlines. At the UN this morning, Benjamin Netanyahu is going to speak. Seems he's brought a number of props to make his case against Hamas, talking about October 7th, 2023, of course. And sources say he wants to address his broadcast in Gaza through loudspeakers. All right, we'll comment on his address, obviously, in our next edition of Breaking News once he makes it. That'll be this morning here, Pacific time and New York time also. So it's going to be interesting to see what he sees. Now, here's the story that's really making the rounds. Former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair proposes he leads an interim Gaza government from the Jerusalem Post. He has support from Trump allies, and he suggested this transitional Gaza government that he would lead would bring post-war stability. Comes from two reports from the UK Telegraph and The Economist. And so this is one, like we said, making the rounds. The plan developed through the Tony Blair Institute, TBI, involves the creation of a temporary administration called the Gaza International Transitional Authority, or GITA. It would be established under United Nations auspices and serve as the governing authority in post-war Gaza for several years before transferring control to the Palestinian Authority pending internal reforms. Blair, 72, reportedly offered to head the interim body on the condition it would eventually return power to the Palestinian Authority. This is according to The Economist. He is prepared to devote his time to implementing the proposal. The initiative has gathered support from Jared Kushner, former advisor to President Trump, was his son-in-law, and Steve Witkoff, Trump's special envoy. The two presented the plan during a meeting with Trump at the White House on August 27th. Trump endorsed the idea and later raised it during the discussion with leaders from Turkey, Pakistan, Indonesia, 5 Arab states at the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Maybe we could end the war right now, Trump reportedly said. Drafts of the Gita plan indicate that the body would act as the supreme political and legal authority for Gaza during the transitional period. The board would include senior UN officials, international business leaders, and at least one Palestinian representative and Muslim representation. The plan does not call for the displacement of Gaza's population. TBI conducted surveys indicating that more than 25% of Gazans supported some form of international involvement in post-war governments, with about one-third supporting a role for the Palestinian Authority. Now, here's what's fascinating. Hamas has actually called for some representation. Palestinian Authority Mahmoud Abbas said Thursday that the PA is ready to assume responsibility for governments and security in Gaza. Hamas called for some representation in the non-military roles, including education. All right, sources told The Economist that the proposed model is inspired by international administrations used in East Timor and Kosovo. The authority could be based in El Arish, Egypt, near Gaza's southern border. Trump reportedly gave Blair 2 weeks to seek regional backing for the plan, with a particular focus on security support from Saudi Arabia. Saudi's Crown Prince MBS Mohammed bin Salman has stated that any post-war roadmap, now get this, must include a path to Palestinian statehood, a condition that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has, of course, rejected. Israel has not endorsed the return of the PA to Gaza, but is reported to have engaged constructively with the plan. Finance Minister Smotrich recently described Gaza as a real estate bonanza and said he had discussed the region's future with U.S. officials. Now, the comments to this article are priceless from the Jerusalem Post. Here's one commenter. Right. The British did such a wonderful job governing the Middle East and India. It sounds like he's trying to turn the clock back to the 1920s and their failure to adhere to the League of Nations mandate. The sun set on the British Empire 100 years ago. That's so true. What they used to say, the sun never set on the British Empire. They had, they were literally around the world, India, all other places. So now, of course, it's a total eclipse. They don't have any power anywhere in the world. Another commentator said this, "Hey, Tony, in case you weren't aware, Hamas still hadn't surrendered and released the hostages. The article states that Hamas still wants a role in areas like education." He says, that's part of the problem in the first place. All right. Here's our comments. Though it may have the backing of Trump's son-in-law and Witkoff, it's really hard to imagine Israel even entertaining the idea, let alone Hamas. Again, Trump is set to talk to Netanyahu face-to-face on Monday about it. We will wait and see what happens. All right, headline number 3. This one's fascinating. Pete Hegseth orders hundreds of U.S. military leaders to gather on short notice at Marine Base in Virginia. This is a Breitbart story. According to the Washington Post, the directive included virtually all of the military's top commanders worldwide, and it was issued this week. Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell confirmed to the Post that Hegseth will be addressing his senior military leaders early next week while offering no further details. He also expressed no concerns about the meeting. There are about 800 generals and admirals spread across the United States and dozens of others in countries and time zones. Note to the Post. Hegseth's order applies to all senior officers with the rank of brigadier general or above, or their Navy equivalent, serving in command positions and their top enlisted advisors. Top commanders in conflict zones and senior military leaders stationed throughout Europe, the Middle East, and the Asia-Pacific region are among those expected to attend the meeting, said people familiar with the matter, who spoke on condition of anonymity as they were not authorized to publicly discuss the issue. One source said military officials could not recall seeing such an order previously, which is sparking concern. People are very concerned. They have no idea what it means. Remember, recently they renamed the Department of Defense the Department of War. And Trump says we are not, on the back foot here. We are not, responding to things. We are people who are, taking the initiative, taking the lead. And so, again, this all sounds rather ominous, doesn't it? Yesterday, and this is interesting, my Iranian friend Nader contacted me. Now, he works with special forces. He is deeply involved with what they're doing literally in the Middle East and around the world. He said there was tons of chatter now going on among the intelligence community. The Department of Defense and the Department of War is making a number of moves right now worldwide. They're doing things. They're shuffling around. And he said Iran is freaking out because they're afraid of another U.S. attack on their military facilities. And we have this headline today from the Jerusalem Post. Netanyahu Trump to discuss Iran's missile nuclear programs after AP analysis shows reconstruction. Netanyahu and Trump are set to discuss these programs after satellite images reveal reconstruction of key missile sites. Both leaders vow to act against Iran's nuclear ambitions. So, what's going to happen? Will the U.S. and Israel go after Iran again, saying they're working on rebuilding their missile and nuclear programs? Or is there something else in the mix? We will have to wait and see, but this is rather ominous, and we will, of course, keep our eyes on it. Now, finally, a fourth story that is, I don't have any words for this. It's so hard to believe in America. This would never be even humanly possible, even in the past. But here's where we're at today in, end of September here in 2025. It's from a Rasmussen poll. 54% of liberals call Charlie Kirk's killing understandable. That's over one half. Just over one half of America's liberal voters and 40% of registered Democrats believe that the assassination of Turning Point USA CEO Charlie Kirk was understandable, according to a new poll released from Rasmussen Reports. The survey reported that 54% of liberal voters believe that the conservative leader trafficked in hateful rhetoric and therefore viewed his murder as understandable. Charlie Kirk was speaking hateful words, and his murder was tragic but understandable, said 54% of liberals and almost half of Democrats. Only 9% of Republicans polled found Kirk's killing understandable. When the voting public as a whole was measured, the majority said they believed Kirk was more of a unifying force. Rasmussen reported that 62% agree that Charlie Kirk was peacefully and respectfully debating people, which he was, and it's a tragedy that he was murdered. So, this survey is one of the first to assess the country's political pulse of Kirk and his legacy since the murder on September 10th. The poll was conducted to Sunday's memorial at the State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. The survey also found that 60% of respondents believe domestic terrorism, a greater threat to the U.S., compared to 24% who think foreign terrorism is a greater threat. All right, this is understandable with all what we talked about yesterday, with our politicians saying things about ICE, saying things about anybody who stands up for law and order. Charlie was for law and order, and if you ever listened to his rhetoric, if you knew him personally, if he was here in Southern California a lot, in three of the main churches I spoke at in the last number of years, he was there all the time, making himself known, and everybody said the same thing. He's a wonderful guy. He would basically dialogue with anybody. He wasn't hateful at all, not in the least. He was trying to get a dialogue, between people, and he's a Bible-believing Christian. He wanted people to know Jesus above all. So the fact that they painted him as this horrible, anti, everything, to the degree that he deserved to be murdered, deserved to be killed, shows how far this country has fallen. About half the country is what has this feeling. And the sad thing is, like we mentioned yesterday, this half of the country has different clubs, at least 10,000 people who are, toting guns now. Some of the long-range shooters, and we saw this happen, with Charlie. We saw it just happen recently with this ICE attempt of an assassination of ICE agents in Dallas, and we know it's going to happen more and more. The year ago, Butler, Pennsylvania, the attempt to take out, at that time, candidate Donald Trump. It's a sad world we live in, but as Jesus said, like the days of Noah, so will the last days be. And in our book, 25 Signs We're Near the End, we said two of the main signs of the end, like in the days of Noah, are violence and lawlessness. That's precisely what we're seeing right now, and it's only going to get worse and worse. The good news is we know Christ will return, set up his kingdom, and we will be part of that if we have believed in Jesus Christ. And that's the whole reason we do breaking news here every day, not just to give you the latest headlines, but to show that God's word is continually being fulfilled right in front of our very eyes with respect to what it says about the times of the end. All right, we'll be back a second time later today with another edition of Breaking News. We'll comment on Netanyahu's speech and the fallout, and we'll see what else is happening with this Tony Blair plan. Until that time, I'm Don Stewart. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.